59% of organizations are investing in agentic AI IT operations today, yet the vast majority of those agents still can't remember what they did yesterday. My name is Paul Nashawaty, and I'm the practice lead and principal analyst for the AppDev practice, and this is the AppDevANGLE. Today, I'm joined by Karthik, co-founder and CEO of Yugabyte. Yugabyte's the team that's behind YugabyteDB, and they now have a new product called Meko that is direct aim for one of the most underappreciated gaps in enterprise AI infrastructure. Karthik, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
So excellent. Karthik, why don't you give the audience a little bit about you and a little bit about Yugabyte?
Absolutely. So about me, Paul, like a lot of infrastructure and data and distributed systems background. So, I started Yugabyte with my co-founder Kanan about 10 years ago. So, 10 years in the making for, cloud native, modern distributed data systems. Before that at places like Nutanix and Meta, building, again, distributed storage, distributed databases. And we were the team that built an open source Apache Cassandra out of Facebook, along with Apache HBase. We have work that we did with other teams on RocksDB and, a lot more. So, front row ticket at seeing how the data space has been evolving. And before that, I was at Microsoft. Before at places like Nutanix and Meta, I was at Microsoft working on data inflow, high performance distributed systems at Flow, which is the networking stack for the Windows operating system. So I love bringing architectures that help the industry. So that's become my passion over time. So it's been really great, and that's what Yugabyte does. That's what Kanan and I decided we'd do when we started Yugabyte.
Yeah, well, Karthik, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. There's a lot going on in the market. You bring a wealth of knowledge. Your background is definitely on par with a lot of today's challenges. But here's where things stand. Nearly 3 to 4 enterprise IT leaders name AI and machine learning as really a top spending priority for the next 12 months. We see this as a massive wave towards capital flow into AI systems. We see a lot is generating towards agents. Agent AI is no longer the proof of concept category. It's really production right now. We see that. And we also see that teams are deploying agents into customer support, into dev workflows, into the sales pipelines, and they're expecting returns, right? There's a lot happening here. So, when this also does create a real tension with organizations because they expect ROI. And now that it's baked into most AI budgets, they want to know where the money's going, right? And when you look at the modeling out 2 to 3 years on return for these systems, a stateless agent is typically a bad bet when we look at some of these things, right? So organizations are needing to understand how agents are compounding over time. And as they get better at work, they can carry institutionalized knowledge that helps in the way a seasoned employees does, right? So that's really choosing that like junior and senior kind of skill. But the gap, Karthik, in the Yugabyte team, what you're stepping into is really, that's the focus that a lot's happening. So Karthik, let's just jump right into this, right? When we look at the first problem in the market that we're seeing, stateless agent problems is a data architecture problem. It's not an AI problem, right? And this is something that you and I have talked about quite a bit. The real ceiling on agentic AI, maybe actually in the data, in the data layer, where we see 45% of AI and ML practitioners citing operational complexity as their primary challenge. So that's something to consider. What are your thoughts here?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Paul. Like, it is actually a data infrastructure problem, but recognizing it is not obvious because it is underneath the waterline, and the agentic space in general is moving so fast that people are at different stages, and when you're trying to kind of combine all the voices, you may hear that the problem is still a problem that has already been solved, and the market or the tech has already moved forward, but the market still believes in the prior incarnation of the problem, right? So today the problem is really about state management and data management, because your agentic systems are only as good as the state and the data that you feed it. And the problems that have been solved really well are the model problems. Like, models are really good, and the orchestration problems, which is also getting really, really good, right? And as well as the SDKs to build these agents. So those have gotten easier, and it's now the iteration cycles between your data infrastructure to be able to run more experiments, to be able to measure the outcome and tie it directly to business value, right? So I think that's where we are right now, at least what we see. And to take one more, detailed look at it, like if you go down one more level, a single agent system, right? Like when a person uses an agent to do something, is just an efficiency gain. Like if I use an agent, I'm going to make my work 30% faster. So it's like if I typed a document versus if I asked an agent to build a document, maybe what would have taken me an hour is now going to take me 30 minutes or 10 minutes, right? It's much faster. But if you look at what enterprises need in order to deliver value, that linear cut in time doesn't really translate into business value. It's only when people can collaborate as teams of agents that they can unlock value, right? Like, so when you and I both work on a research that we use agents for, which can build the document together, that's when we start unlocking the value because, in enterprises, everything is a team. Now, when you look at teams, there's really no way for agents to actually share their context, their state, their, knowledge, their findings, their reasoning. There's no way to share any of this stuff. In fact, there's no way even for agents to look at what did the other agent come out with as the output and why did it come out with that output, right? If you are to take a human analogy, this is the same as creating a team where, like, let's say you and I are working as a team. The two of us can only communicate the final result of our thought process. We cannot share our reasoning, our assumptions, why we came up with something. We cannot do that. We can only share the output, right? That's not very useful to work as a team. That makes it very slow because you tell me something, I'm now guessing what you said. In the agentic world, that translates to more token burn, more orchestration, more experiments, a lot of more stuff, right? And if you recognize it for what it is, which is a data infrastructure problem, it's now, you can phrase it as, how can I share truth?
Yeah, Karthik, I mean, it does make sense. When we think about it, the operational complexities that practitioners face when they're trying to stitch together vector stores, relational database, and caching layers, it really is a data infrastructure issue. But Karthik, when we're looking at the announcement that you just put out, Meko, right? Meko it's the bet that agents can use their own native data infrastructure. But we see that most databases and data vendors are retrofitting existing products into the AI workflows and workloads. So Yugabyte is, from my understanding from our conversations, it's really undergoing this other direction of building agent native infrastructure from the ground up. Right, you're not retrofitting, and that's meaningful because the architecture and the market is betting on kind of changes here. So the question I have for you is, what does this actually mean to build infrastructure that's native to agents, and why really can't you just extend what's already existing? Like, why is there a big difference between the two?
I think that's the key question, isn't it? So we are evolving our database to be AI native while building AI native data infrastructure, which uses the database and does more, right? So I think that's really the difference that we have to split and understand, right? So if you look at, we're very fortunate at Yugabyte. I'd say it's in part like, the thesis of founding the company, in part just worked out that way, right? So when we started, we bet heavily on Postgres, and now the industry is bringing a lot of the other access patterns required for agentic into Postgres because it's such a large community. So you have relational. What Yugabyte does is brings the NoSQL aspects to Postgres, like through YugabyteDB. We have PG Vector, which is a vector database. We have now a graph database, which through Apache Age, an extension in Postgres, and we can get more. We can get all the other access patterns. So we already have a highly scalable, available, distributed foundation for all of these access patterns. So now what, right? When you look at the next problem, so a lot of vendors, by the way, are trying to retrofit this into their stack to say, here's a plethora of data access models and databases, and I can help you simplify the agentic workload. But when you look at what's next, right, what really happens is that the agentic concepts and workflows that you need get mapped to these databases by people, by agents, a combination of the two. And the problem is these workflows are not deterministically mapped out. They're just like randomly mapped out on the fly because, hey, the agent can do what they do. The problem is the inefficiencies start to add up over the runs, over the use cases, over the different types of access patterns. And what you end up with is no structured workflow, no efficient modeling or query patterns underneath it, and no way to realize that this is being done in a cost-effective manner. And even worse, you're now reasoning about how to build these workflows rather than reasoning about, if you had those workflows, what would you build as business value on top, right? So that's kind of the gap that we saw. And we felt that like just using the database and retrofitting it simply doesn't cut it, right? So we are adding a lot of, actual, data infrastructure technology on top, in order to take these workflows and make them best in class and to be most efficient with the least token burn and most flexible with observability, so the rest of the layers above can go much faster. So I'd say that's the fundamental difference. And when we realize that difference, both through we have agents that we use ourselves as well as what we see with our users, we felt like you cannot service it by retrofitting it in the existing stack. You have to build a lot of layers on top to make that bridge that gap that has to go away.
Yeah, and I want to simplify what you just said, just from the audience perspective. If we look at what Meko allows to, really happen, what happens here is it allows agents to learn not just from their own prior interactions, but from other agents in the same system. So if you're building, you can it's basically bridging the gap between your heritage environments and your new environments together, so you can have a unified view of the data sets, which is incredibly important. That is the challenge with a lot of these systems. And I think the other thing, Karthik, that we have to think about is, enterprises are looking at AI systems that need auditability, right? And they also, most of the current stacks that are out there today, they just can't deliver it, right? Compliance, auditability are really becoming serious blockers for AI development in these regulated environments, right? We see this as a challenge. We know with the regulations, governance, compliance, and the things that are going into effect, this is a big challenge for a lot of organizations. But the conversation usually forces model behavior, not whether the system can actually trace why an agent made a decision 3 weeks ago, but based on something that learned in the past 6 months. So with the new release of Meko, the approach that you're talking here, Karthik, what approach, or how is auditability and compliance being addressed, and why is it harder to solve than most teams can really expect?
Yeah. So the way we're connecting it is that, people are starting to use multiple different agentic applications, right? Like desktop applications, coding applications, so on, specialized applications, right? So that's one. Second part is there are multiple people in the team, each using one or more agents. So you're looking at a team of, heterogeneous and homogeneous agents that need to collaborate together. So that's the first level. The second level is these, the work happens through conversation interaction, but it's not just work. It's not just instructions that are in the conversation. It's also half knowledge. So for example, you ask the agent something and it gives you back an answer that's about 80% right, because agents are non-deterministic. They give you back something approximately right. To fix the 20% gap, a user may tell the agent, make these assumptions, don't deviate from it, and now give me the answer. And in just that conversation, they've given it some information, which is knowledge, which is factually useful, and they've asked it to do some work, right? And if you don't want each user to give a different, conflicting, or slightly different variant of the same information, we need to make this available across the different systems, right? So Meko solves that problem. It plugs into all of the agentic applications that you can think of through the most intuitive native way that agents work, which is the MCP server. It's the Model Context Protocol. It's the API through which agents can speak to this system. And it collects all this information along with how did the agentic LLM think about it? What was I'm going to work on this problem using these steps. And then what did it learn? What can it extract as learnings from there? And how can it store those learnings? And how can it say, I thought of doing this, and this is how I actually executed it. My thinking was, I'm going to go look at if there's prior context here. I'm going to ask the LLM for something, and then I'm going to package up the response this way. You need that thinking. You also need to know, how did it look for prior context? What queries did it fire? How long did it take? What data did you have? This is important because your agentic system is only as good as the data you have, and you may want to discover, is the data missing? Is there some gaps in the data? Is there some inaccuracies in the data? Is there something else that the user is looking for that's not even the focus of the current agent, and you should send them somewhere else? There's many ways that you can slip up, right, so to speak, in making an agent not work well. And Meko captures all of that. It lets you promote the stuff that everybody in the team needs to use to be collective and shared across the team, be it memory or knowledge. You can promote your memories to collective memories and shared knowledge. And then you can go back and look at, where did this memory come from? Who brought it up? What conversation, what agent reasoning gave rise to this memory, to this knowledge memory, collective memory, etc. And then you can go and talk to the person to say, look, this is great. You should keep contributing. Or look, maybe your understanding of this project is not accurate. This is what you need to do. So it really bridges that collaboration to where agents can now talk to agents and not just humans. So we're not at human speed, we're at agentic speed.
Yeah, and also it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it addresses the difference between logging what the agent did versus tracking what they're seeing on based on this accumulated knowledge, so they can actually look at things and aggregate all the data together and go to make an informed decision, which is very helpful because it's not these siloed responses that you get in a lot of different agent activity you see today. So
Exactly.
super. Yeah, yeah. And Karthik, I want to kind of pivot here because I think that the other main thing we should kind of touch on here is the economic story that sets the stage for Mako's value proposition, right? We see that in our economic validation that we're creating, that's soon to be published, right? This is a very powerful report because it shows that the Yugabyte database is showing 55 reduction in downtime related to revenue exposure and up to 210% ROI over 3 years. That's not marketing. That's like real actionable numbers, right? So like that's something that the audience should understand, that if you're trying to move in this direction, it is about operational efficiencies and cost as well as, does the tech stack actually work? So it says something very important about the real cost sits in the database dependent applications. It also creates a credible foundation of how Yugabyte is really framing Mako. But the question I have for you is, how does the economic case for distributed PostgreSQL inform how you're thinking about the business value of Mako?
Yeah, it's a huge underlying pillar, and in fact, that's what actually made us, foray into this and take the next bold step of building a whole lot of infrastructure on top of this base infrastructure. I mean, if you just think about what you just said, Paul, like it's a 55% reduction in downtime, right? And especially revenue-facing downtime. What are we trying to do with agentic software? We're trying to make that revenue go up, make it more efficient, make it all quicker, right? So a 55% drop in downtime directly, already correlated to a recoup of lost revenue. Now it just does it even more, right? But there's another subtle aspect here. You don't want to walk into a building that looks amazing or like a train that looks really futuristic for the train or the building to just break down. There's the power's cut as soon as you get in. It doesn't work that way. You have to live up to what the system is supposed to do. So an agentic system that's truly next generation cannot afford downtime because it makes people think, gee, is this just like all a surface thing and it's not really deeply integrated inside, right? So it is important to get the underpinnings right. That's the first point. And the second point I think is equally important is, the report, as you talk to real customers and they talked about their real value. So it's about a 50% reduction in the engineering effort, right? Again, think about what we're trying to do with agentic software. Like on the engineering side, we're trying to make our engineers way more capable and efficient and go faster and faster, and reducing their effort in trying to figure out how to deal with downtime or scalability or some of these core aspects, like makes them much more productive in getting ROI out of agents, right? So I feel these make it really, really core. There's another aspect that I'll add to it, like the scalability is not just in lip service. With agentic software, you get a lot of agents starting to do stuff. So every project that every agent works on, and there are multiple of them, that every user owns, they all multiply out into an explosive kind of multi-tenancy, right? So like everything keeps adding data all over the place. So it is important to have a foundation that is truly flexible and scalable to be able to handle this kind of a multi-tenant aspect. And not to mention what you talked about regulation, right? You want to see 6-month-old conversations that led to a particular piece of data getting generated. Well, you need the ability to handle that, the scalability to be able to handle that in a cost-effective manner. So these are some of the aspects why the underpinning data layer makes it super, super important. And it builds on top of that, right? Like now the model selection for the key aspects of how you process the incoming conversation data makes it efficient as well. So that's what Meko brings on top of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also don't want to gloss over the fact here that open system and open source heritage matters too in the market. And you're also addressing that point as well. All right, Karthik, hey, closing thoughts. We're at the end of the session here. There's a lot to think about. Where would the audience go to learn more?
I'd say as you said, open systems, open source. So we have a lot of material out there in the open. I would encourage them to go to our community Slack or our LinkedIn to learn about both. That we have a community Slack, which is the place for the YugabyteDB, the database itself. And Meko has a Discord channel. So please connect with us there. We have, we're pretty active on all the social channels. I myself am quite active on LinkedIn. So, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Please reach out to follow Yugabyte. So I'd say those are the best channels. You can also go to GitHub to learn more if you are looking for a deeper level of information. So those would be the
yeah. And Karthik, also the economic validation report will be out soon. That's another area to download and learn more about the ROI. Karthik, always a pleasure to talk to you. It's great to hear what you're doing. Congrats on the success of this, and thank you for being part of the podcast today.
Thanks, Paul, for having me. Really enjoyed it. As always, it's mutual. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you for being part of the community here. We do appreciate you being part of the app dev community. But for now, that wraps up this episode. But we'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. So whether you're deploying at the edge, building with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.